Hello, gorgeous souls. Welcome back to the Backroad Star. How's everybody doing this week? So, this upcoming weekend, I have a family reunion with my father's side of the family. And honestly, I'm recently discovered I am one of 27 grandchildren. I always knew there were too many cousins to keep up with, but now there are around 75 great-grandchildren too. So at this point, I am not even pretending I know everyone's names anymore. I just hug and love on whoever walks up to me, I guess. But truly, this is one of my favorite family events every year. It's outdoors. I love fishing, camping, the kids running around everywhere, stories being told around the campfires. And every Saturday night, there's a fish fry. Dozens and dozens of camp chairs all circled together, people laughing, talking over each other, telling the same stories they have told for years. But this year feels different. My grandmother passed away in March, and now with both of my grandparents gone, it would be very easy for everyone to slowly stop showing up for these traditions, to stop gathering, to stop camping, to stop sitting in the shade telling old stories. But honestly, I think moments like this matter even more now, because somebody created these traditions before us. Somebody made the calls, cooked the food, set up the chairs, and held the family together year after year. And now the responsibility quietly passes to the next generations to keep showing up, to keep gathering, to keep remembering each other. And by the way, thank you, Loretta, for keeping up with the family Facebook group. I think Laws has a way of reminding us how important connection really is, how quickly time moves, and how precious ordinary moments actually become once you realize they will not last forever. And of course, for me, it also turns into one giant photo shoot. Sunrises, trees moving in the wind, morning coffee by the campfires, fishing poles against the water, sunsets. And this year, I get a full moon and a sky full of stars hours away from city pollution. Honestly, it feels like stepping back into something simpler for a little while. And maybe that connects perfectly in tonight's conversation. So before we get started, remember, if you found your way here, again, trust there's a reason. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And if these conversations speak to you, I would truly appreciate your likes, comments, and subscribes so more people can find our little corner of the internet too. This channel is a space for honest conversations, a safe place to finally say things out loud. No gurus, no pretending, no masks, just real and authentic conversations. No filters. Tonight we're talking about what happens when your body starts telling the truth your mind tries to outrun, when it says, enough. Not because you are weak, not because you failed, but because you have been surviving for so long you stopped realizing how exhausted you truly were. I think a lot of people listening tonight know exactly what that feels like. The pushing, the overfunctioning, the constant survival mode. And in this episode, we're going to talk honestly about what happens when the body can no longer carry the weight the mind keeps trying to force us to hold. And more importantly, what rebuilding looks like after that moment. And over the next few episodes, we're going to talk honestly about the pillars of self-care. Not the polished version people try to sell, the human version, the necessary version. Because I think many people are realizing something. The way we have been living is exhausting us. Constant pressure, constant rushing, constant expectations, constant survival mode. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, many people have completely disconnected from themselves. So we're going to talk about rest, overstimulation, slowing down, about nourishment, about movement, routines, about learning how to create a life that actually feels livable again. Because self-care is no longer just a luxury. For many people, me included, it's become how I have to survive. This was not just exhaustion. For me, this was my tower moment. The collapse of an old life and the beginning of a new one. My physical wake-up call came when I walked around with a torn rotor cuff in my right shoulder for 7 months. It was during an unbelievable ice storm the week of Halloween 2022 in Norman, Oklahoma. At the time, our house was surrounded by 14 massive oak and pecan trees. Limbs were snapping everywhere under the weight of the ice. By the way, the magnolia tree was the only thing untouched. The power was already out, but with every gust of wind, more electrical lines along our street were popping. So there we were, me, my son, and my daughter, outside trying to clear broken limbs away from the electrical line running from the alley to our house. My kids were 16 and 20 at the time, and somehow we thought determination and a tiny chainsaw were enough. I still cringe thinking about it. My daughter bent down to grab one of those branches from the ground to drag toward the street pile, and I heard a pop. Instantly, I reached up to catch a branch before it hit the back of her head. I deflected it. She was fine. But I heard a sound. I heard another pop, and it was in my shoulder. I took a deep breath. No tears. The kids were watching. I told them I was okay, but we were done. It was too dangerous. We did not have the right equipment. I watched them lock up the garage. Then I walked into the bathroom, got into the shower to warm up, and cried. I cried hard. I knew immediately it was bad. I had heard a pop like that once before in my knee playing basketball years earlier. I could barely lift my arm high enough to wash my hair. Sharp pain radiated diagonally into my neck. I remember pressing my cheek against the cold shower tile, trying not to scream. And I remember the thought that crossed my mind. Please, God. I handle too much to be down like this. And looking back now, that sentence says everything. Not, I hope I recover. Not, I need to take care of this. My first thought was, I can't afford to stop. So I did what so many people do. I pushed through. Ibuprofen, heat, ice, TENS unit, creams, more creams. At the time, I was an accountant controller for an oil company. I kept telling myself, just make it through the end of the fourth quarter. It's the holidays. There will be lots of downtime. You can rest. It'll be fine by January 1. And January 1st came, and work exploded, and my shoulder was not any better. I had deadlines, reports, meetings, tax season, life moving forward like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I had a pillow under my right forearm at my desk every single day just to relieve pressure off my shoulder enough to type. And honestly, I still don't know how I made it through those holidays. It must have been bad because I can't remember them. Pain has a way of stealing your presence long before it steals your ability to function. And I was still functioning, still showing up, still handling everything, still pretending I was okay. Fast forward to April 16th, the day after the tax deadline here in the U.S. I finally took a deep breath and called the doctor's office, only to find out my doctor had left the clinic. So even though I was staying within the same office, I was now considered a new patient. The first available appointment, July, over 3 months away. And honestly, that became a lesson for me on so many levels, because sometimes pain becomes the thing that finally forces us to see ourselves honestly. When I finally got into that appointment, the doctor asked, "Why did you wait so long?" I remember shrugging, because honestly, I didn't even know how to answer that anymore. Then came the question that hit harder than the injury itself. Don't you think You are worth the time and money to take care of yourself. Don't you think you are worth the time and money to take care of yourself? I remember immediately feeling emotional because suddenly this conversation was no longer about my shoulder. It was about me, about how disconnected I had become from my own needs, about how easy it was for me to justify spending time, energy, money, and care on everyone else, while struggling to justify those same things for myself. Then came the final hit. The doctor looked at me and said, "You know I'm not letting you out of here until we get everything scheduled, right?" Then she looked at me again and said, "You're a single mom. I understand. But who is going to take care of your kids if you don't address these things now? And if those lumps come back cancerous, we have to be aggressive with treatment." I remember feeling this overwhelming mix of fear, panic, embarrassment, and exhaustion all at once. Not because I was angry, not because she was wrong, but because deep down, I knew she was seeing something I had spent years trying not to look at myself. I had become someone who could justify caring for everyone else while continuously postponing care for myself. And looking back now, I realized my body had been trying to get my attention for a very long time. But I think many of us were taught to ignore ourselves, to push through exhaustion, push through stress, push through pain, until that survival becomes normal. And eventually the body responds to the way we repeatedly treat ourselves. I think one of the hardest realizations for me personally was understanding that I had spent years treating my body like a machine instead of a home. As long as I could keep functioning, I told myself I was fine. If I could still go to work, still pay bills, still take care of kids, still take care of my responsibilities, then clearly nothing was truly wrong. But functioning and feeling are not the same thing. Feeling alive isn't the same thing. Because there are seasons of life where you become so focused on surviving responsibilities that you slowly disconnect from yourself without even realizing it's happening. You stop noticing tension. You stop noticing exhaustion. You stop noticing how disconnected you feel from joy. And eventually your baseline becomes tired. Tired. Not a little tired. Soul tired. Mind tired. Body tired. Emotionally tired. And for a long time, I honestly believed that was just adulthood. Wake up exhausted. Rush through mornings. Drink coffee instead of water. Skip meals. Push through headaches. Ignore stress. Ignore tension. Ignore the body. Go to sleep overstimulated. Have trouble sleeping. Wake up and repeat it all again. And somewhere in the middle of all that, life starts passing you by very quickly. That is the part why mornings became so important to me, because I realized I had not actually experienced a morning in years. I was awake for them, usually running late, but I wasn't present for them. I was mentally already at work, already stressed, already overwhelmed, already thinking about deadlines. And I started realizing I did not want every day of my life to begin in panic. So slowing mornings down became one of my first acts of self-care that truly changed. Not because it looked impressive, not because it was aesthetic, but because for the first time in years, decades, I started noticing my own life again. The taste of coffee, the sound of the birds outside, the feeling of the cool morning air, the quiet before the world wakes up. And maybe that sounds insignificant, but honestly, I think life is built for moments exactly like this. I think many of us keep waiting for giant life-changing moments to finally feel peace, when in reality, peace often enters through small repeated moments. through rhythm and consistency, through intentionality. And I think that is why rituals become so important to me now. Not rigid routines, not punishment, and not control. That is not me. Rituals. Things that gently tell my body, we're slowing down now. We're safe. We do not have to rush anything. Closing the kitchen after supper. Turning off the office lights so I don't go back in to keep working. Showering at night to wash the day off. Using lavender scented everything in the evening to tell my body it's bedtime. Music, stretching, quiet, no earbuds, no screens. These small things started teaching my body something I had forgotten. Rest. And I think many people do not realize how difficult rest actually becomes when your mind and your body have been overstimulated for years. Sometimes people think they are bad at resting, but really, their body has simply forgotten how. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels unfamiliar. Doing nothing creates guilt. So we reach for stimulation instead. The phones, television, scrolling, noise, constant distraction. And I am not saying technology is evil. I happen to love it. But I do think many of us are exhausted in ways we do not even fully recognize anymore. Our brains were never designed to absorb this much stimulation every waking moment. And eventually the body starts responding through exhaustion, anxiety, inflammation, sleep problems, brain fog, disconnection. But real change usually begins much smaller than people think. Drinking more water, going to bed early, taking a short walk, stepping outside for sunlight, breathing slower, laughing more, allowing for the quiet. Simple does not mean insignificant. And maybe this is not about becoming a completely different person. Maybe this is simply about returning to yourself, paying attention to what your body needs, what your mind needs, and what your spirit needs, and understanding that caring for yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. Maybe peace enters slowly, like a dawn, softly, quietly, one small choice at a time. Take a deep breath. You are loved. You are safe. You are worthy. And I believe in you. Always.